It was a normal day in Los Angeles. The sun was shining, the streets were busy, and people were moving quickly, as always. In the middle of all this, a quiet man walked toward a shiny phone store in a famous shopping area. He didn't look like a celebrity. He wore a simple gray hoodie, old jeans, and sneakers that had seen better days. His head was down. He didn't speak to anyone. He looked like just another regular person. That man was Keanu Reeves. But the people in the phone store didn't know that. To them, he was just a strange guy holding an old, broken flip phone, the kind of phone most people had thrown away years ago. The screen was cracked. The body was scratched, barely turned on. Keanu waited patiently at the front desk, holding the phone gently in his hand like it still mattered. Two employees behind the counter noticed him. One of them, a young man with slick hair and expensive sunglasses, raised an eyebrow. He nudged the other and whispered something. Then they both started laughing. "Hey, look at that thing," the first one said loudly. "Is that a phone or a museum piece?" the second added with a laugh. "I think he brought it here for repairs. What's next?" "A fax machine." Keanu didn't reply. He just gave a small smile and waited. Another customer came in, a businessman with a suit and the latest smartphone. The workers immediately turned to him, offering help and calling him sir. They offered him coffee, talked to him politely, and ignored Keanu like he didn't exist. Keanu stood there for a few more minutes. No one asked if he needed help. One staff member even rolled her eyes when she looked at him. To her, he was just wasting their time. He finally spoke, softly. "Excuse me, can someone help me? I think this phone is dying, but I still like it." The first employee chuckled again. "That thing? Man, just let it go. It's not 2005 anymore." Still calm, Keanu nodded. "It's got important messages. And it's special to me." The second employee smirked. "You could buy 5 new phones with a week's paycheck. Unless you don't have one." Keanu didn't answer that. He simply said, "It's all right. I'll try somewhere else." He turned and walked out of the store, the same quiet way he came in. Outside, the world was still bright and busy. But something had changed. Not in the world, but in Keanu's heart. He wasn't angry, he wasn't hurt, but he was deeply sad. Not for himself, but for what people had become. In his car, Keanu sat in silence. He looked down at the broken phone in his hand. That phone had been with him for years. It had messages from his sister. It had photos from sets where he filmed small, independent projects. It had simple memories, ones he didn't store in the cloud. To him, it wasn't just a phone. It was part of his past. But that store didn't care about that. They cared about appearance. About who had money. About who wore expensive clothes and had the newest technology. Keanu thought back to all the times he had seen people treated badly, because they looked poor or different. He had seen homeless people ignored. He had seen elderly people pushed aside. He had seen people judged not for who they were, but for what they looked like. And now it had happened to him. Not as a famous actor, not as a millionaire, but as a regular man with a simple need. Still sitting in his car, Keanu whispered to himself, "It's not about the phone." That moment stayed in his heart for a long time. He didn't complain. He didn't post online. He didn't ask for attention. But deep down, he made a quiet promise. A promise that one day, if he ever had the chance, he would create something better. A place where people were treated with kindness, no matter what phone they carried or how they looked. A place where respect came first, not status. That day, Keanu Reeves drove away from the phone store not with anger, but with a seed in his mind. A seed of change, and one day, that seed would grow into something no one at that store could ever imagine. Keanu drove through the streets of Los Angeles, but his mind was still inside that phone store. The laughter, the jokes, the way they looked at him like he didn't matter, wasn't something he could easily forget. He had seen things like this before, but this time it had happened to him, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. He pulled up at a quiet coffee shop he liked. It wasn't fancy. Just a small place run by an old couple who smiled at every customer. They didn't care if someone wore a suit or a hoodie. They just served warm drinks and warm hearts. Keanu ordered a black coffee and sat at a corner table by the window. He placed the broken flip phone gently on the table and stared at it. His fingers ran over the scratches. Every mark on that phone had a story. It wasn't just a piece of plastic. It was part of his life. He remembered when he first bought it. It was just after filming one of his early movies. He wasn't rich, not yet. He had bought that phone with his own money, saved from months of hard work. It was the first expensive thing he ever got for himself, and it still worked, kind of. Sure, the screen flickered. The buttons stuck sometimes, but it held the last voicemail his sister ever left him. It had text messages from friends who were no longer alive. It had saved photos from days that would never come back. The phone was old, but it was full of memories, and that made it priceless. So why did they laugh? Keanu sipped his coffee and looked outside. People rushed past the window. Some looked happy, some tired, and some just lost in thought. He wondered how many of them had ever been laughed at for no reason. How many of them had walked into a store just needing help and left feeling smaller. Why did they laugh? He whispered to himself. Was it because of his clothes, his phone, his quiet voice? Or was it because people had forgotten how to be kind? He wasn't angry at the workers. They were young, maybe even stressed. Maybe they didn't mean to be cruel. Maybe they thought they were just being funny. But the truth was, their words hurt, and not just him. That kind of behavior hurt everyone it touched. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his mother, who used to tell him, kindness is free. But it's the most valuable thing you can give. She raised him with simple rules. Be humble, help others, and never think you're better than anyone. But the world didn't always work that way. It seemed like people only respected money, looks, and power. If you didn't look rich, you were ignored. If you didn't act loud, you were forgotten. He took another sip and sighed. He had fame. He had money. He could have walked into any VIP store and bought 10 phones, but that's not who he was. He didn't want to be treated special. He just wanted to be treated kindly, like any person should. He looked back at the phone. The cracked screen lit up for a second, then faded again. He smiled. That little phone had lasted through years of travel, late-night calls, and quiet moments. It had done its job well. It didn't deserve to be laughed at. And neither did anyone else. At that moment, something changed in Keanu's heart. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want to embarrass those workers. But he did want to make the world better, even if just a little bit. What if there was a store where no one laughed at you? What if there was a place where the staff helped everyone the same way, no matter what phone they had or what clothes they wore? What if kindness was the rule, not the exception? He didn't know how or when, but he knew one thing for sure. One day, he would create something better. He finished his coffee, picked up his old phone, and walked out of the shop with a quiet smile. People passed by him again, not knowing who he was, not knowing what he had just decided. But that decision, made with a broken phone in one hand and a heart full of hope, would one day change everything. It wasn't about the phone. It was about respect, and respect, Keanu believed, should never have a price tag. Years before the phone store incident, Keanu Reeves had already lived a life full of pain, loss, and silent strength. He never liked to talk about it, but those who knew him closely understood this man had walked through fire and still came out kind. He was not born into a rich family. His father left when he was very young. His mother worked hard to raise him and his sisters, moving from one city to another. Keanu never had a real home that felt steady. He often felt like he didn't belong anywhere. School was difficult too. He struggled with reading. Some teachers thought he was lazy, but he just learned in a different way. Other kids made fun of him, but he didn't fight back, stayed quiet, and just kept going. In his teenage years, he found comfort in acting. Not because he wanted to be famous, but because acting made him feel free. It gave him a way to express feelings he never said out loud. It became his escape, his calm in a loud world. Later, he moved to Los Angeles. He didn't have much. He shared small apartments, worked hard, and took every small role he could find. He slept on friends' couches. He ate cheap meals. Sometimes he went without food just to afford rent. But he never gave up. Every day, he tried again. Then came his breakthrough roles, first in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, then later in Speed and The Matrix. People started to notice him. Fame came fast. Money followed. But something strange happened. Keanu didn't change. He still rode the subway. He still wore the same simple clothes. He didn't buy flashy cars or show off big houses. He gave millions of dollars away quietly, often to hospitals and cancer research centers. He supported the crew members on his movie sets, giving them bonuses from his own paycheck. One time, he bought a Harley-Davidson motorcycle for every stuntman who worked with him on The Matrix, and he never bragged about it. People began to ask, why is he so humble? The truth was, Keanu never forgot where he came from. And more importantly, he never forgot the people he had lost. His best friend, River Phoenix, died from a drug overdose when they were still young. It broke Keanu's heart. He never really spoke about it, but the sadness was always there. Later, he fell in love with a woman named Jennifer. They were happy. They dreamed of a future together. But their baby girl was stillborn. She never got to take her first breath. A few months later, Jennifer died in a car accident. Keanu didn't scream. He didn't cry in public. But inside, his heart was shattered. He went on with life. Quietly, he smiled in interviews, acted in movies, and met fans kindly. But deep down, he carried all that pain, all those memories, like stones in his pocket. This pain didn't make him bitter. It made him softer. He saw the world differently. He saw people as humans, not as things to use or judge. When someone was rude, he didn't get angry. He wondered what pain they might be carrying. When someone was poor, he didn't look away. Saw someone who might just need a second chance. That's why the laughter at the phone store didn't make him explode with rage. He had known far deeper pain in his life. A few silly jokes couldn't break him. But they did remind him of something important. The world needed more kindness, more patience, more people who looked past the surface. He knew he couldn't change everyone, but he could start somewhere. He could lead by example. He could build something where people were treated like human beings, not wallets, not outfits, not phone models. The broken phone wasn't just an old gadget. It was part of that journey. It reminded him of the days when he had nothing. It reminded him of Jennifer, of River, of all the people who mattered to him and were now gone. That phone had traveled through years of sadness and strength with him. So when they laughed at it, they didn't just laugh at a phone. They laughed at a memory. They laughed at a man who had walked through more pain than they could imagine, and still chose to be gentle. And that's what made Keanu different. Not the fame, not the money, but the strength to stay kind. No matter how the world treated him. Years passed after that day at the phone store. Keanu Reeves kept working quietly. He made more films, gave more of his money away to charity, and lived a simple life. He never talked about what happened at the store, not even to close friends. But he never forgot it. That moment had stayed with him not as a wound, but as a lesson. Then one day, something unexpected happened. Keanu was sitting with his small team of advisors. They often helped him with personal projects, donations, and small business ideas. One of the team members, a young woman named Lisa, brought up a company that had reached out to them. It was a new tech startup, small, unknown, but full of promise. They have some really good ideas, Lisa explained. They build phones using recycled parts. They treat their workers well. And most of all, they focus on people, not just profit. They even want to open stores where customers are treated with kindness, no matter who they are. Keanu's eyes lit up slightly. Not a big smile, just a flicker. "Show me more," he said. They looked into it. The startup was run by a group of young people who were tired of how big tech companies treated customers rushed, judged, and often ignored if they didn't have enough money. This new team wanted to change that. Keanu liked what he heard. He liked that their goal wasn't just to make the best phone, but to make the best experience for the customer. That reminded him of something. It reminded him of the opposite, of that day when no one cared to help him. Lisa smiled. "There's more," she said. "They're struggling to grow." And guess who their biggest competitor is? Keanu raised an eyebrow. Lisa turned her screen toward him. The name of the big phone company appeared on the screen. The same company that owned the store where he was once laughed at. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His team began talking numbers. The startup didn't have much money, but they had heart. And now they were looking for a partner, someone to invest, someone to believe in them. Keanu sat back in his chair. He looked at the company's logo. It wasn't flashy. It was simple. A small circle with a soft blue glow. He liked that. He liked simple things. "Let's help them," he said softly. Lisa asked, "You want to invest?" He nodded. "More than that. I want to grow it with them. Build something good." But there was one more surprise waiting. A few weeks later, while finalizing the paperwork, Keanu's lawyers made a discovery. The big phone company, the one with the fancy stores, was in financial trouble. Their profits were down. Their customers were unhappy. Some of their top stores were about to be sold to cover losses. One of those stores was the exact location where Keanu had once stood with his old phone. The opportunity was right in front of him. Keanu didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He just thought for a moment and said, "Let's make an offer." His team moved quickly. Quietly, they didn't announce anything in the news. No interviews, no press release. Within weeks, the deal was done. The startup he had supported was now strong enough to take over several stores, including the one that had changed everything. Now, Keanu Reeves had done something rare. He didn't just remember the pain. He didn't just learn from it. He turned it into action. He now had the power to reshape the place that once made him feel small, but not with anger, not with revenge. He wanted to fix it. He wanted to turn that cold store into a warm place, one where no one laughed at broken phones, one where kindness came first, and most of all, one where people were seen not for their clothes, not for their money, but for who they truly were. Keanu didn't do it for fame. He didn't even put his name on the company logo. The world didn't know what was happening behind the scenes, but something beautiful had started. Not because he was rich, not because he was famous, but because he cared. And he remembered what it felt like to be ignored. And now, he was ready to give others what he wished he had been given that day: respect and kindness. The day had come. The final papers were signed. The company that once laughed at Keanu Reeves now belonged to a new owner, someone they never expected. But Keanu didn't throw a party. He didn't post about it online. He didn't call the news. He stayed quiet, like he always did. He didn't want attention. He wanted change. Now that he owned the company through the startup, he helped. He had a chance to do something special. Not just with money, not just with business, but with heart. The first thing he did was visit the headquarters. The main office was filled with stressed managers and workers who had no idea what was coming. They thought the company was just going to be shut down or sold off. But something different happened. Keanu walked in with a small team. No bodyguards, no red carpet. Just him in a hoodie and jeans, carrying a notebook and a warm smile. At first, no one recognized him. He sat down with the new CEO, one of the young startup founders. Together, they talked about a new plan, a new way to run things. Keanu said, "We don't need to change everything, but we do need to change how people are treated." The CEO nodded. "We'll start from the inside." They created a plan to train every employee in kindness and respect, not just for customers, but for each other. Managers were told to listen more. Workers were told they could speak freely. A new culture was born, one based on care, not fear. But that was just the beginning. Next, they turned to the stores. Keanu remembered the one where he had been laughed at. That place was still open, but business was slow. Many customers had stopped coming, so the staff had a reputation for being rude and cold. Keanu decided to visit the store. Personally, he didn't tell anyone in advance. He walked in one afternoon wearing the same gray hoodie. The store looked the same: bright lights, clean floors, expensive phones in glass cases. But the people were different. The workers were quiet. Some looked bored. Some looked tired. One of them noticed him and froze. It was the same young man who had laughed at his phone years ago. His hair was shorter now. He looked older and maybe a little more humble. He stepped forward slowly. "Sir," he said, trying to smile, "how can I help you?" Keanu looked around the store. He didn't say anything at first. Then, very calmly, he said, "I've been here before." The worker's face turned red. He remembered. His eyes dropped to the floor. "I just want you to know," Keanu continued, "I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here because this place matters. How people are treated, hear it, matters." The worker looked up slowly. "I'm sorry for how I treated you. Back then, I was young. I didn't know any better." Keanu nodded. "We all grow. What matters is what we do now." That moment wasn't about power. It was about forgiveness. Keanu didn't fire anyone. He didn't yell. He simply offered a second chance. The new company gave every employee an option: stay and grow with us, or leave with respect and support. Most people stayed. A small sign was placed near the entrance. It read, "We see people, not phones. Everyone is welcome here." That one sentence became the heart of the new brand. Keanu visited other stores too, always quietly. He listened to workers. He asked customers how they felt. Some were shocked to see a movie star asking about their experience, but Keanu didn't want praise. He just wanted honesty. One day, while visiting another location, a single mother came in with her young daughter. Her phone was broken, and she didn't have much money. The staff, trained with the new mindset, treated her with care. They helped her choose a cheaper model, offered her a discount, and even gave the child a small phone-shaped toy to play with. Keanu watched from a distance and smiled. This was the change he had dreamed of. Not just selling phones, but giving people dignity. It had taken years. It had taken patience. But it had all started with a moment of laughter. A moment of being ignored. And now, it had become something powerful, something kind, and most importantly, something real. It was a quiet morning when Keanu Reeves walked once again into the same phone store where years ago he had been laughed at for holding an old, broken flip phone. This time, though, he wasn't just a quiet man in a hoodie. He was now the silent force behind the company. But still, no one knew it was him until he chose to speak. The store looked different now. The sharp white lights had been replaced with warm lighting. There were soft chairs, a kids' corner with toys, and a little free coffee machine for customers. A sign near the front door still read, We see people, not phones. Everyone is welcome here. But the biggest change was not in the walls, it was in the people. Keanu stood at the entrance for a moment, looking around. The same young man who once laughed at him was now the store manager. He saw Keanu, and this time his face turned pale. He slowly walked over, clearly nervous. "Sir," he began, almost whispering. Keanu gave him a soft smile and said, "It's all right. May I sit down with your team for a few minutes?" The manager nodded quickly and called the other workers to the small meeting area in the back of the store. No one knew exactly what was happening, but they sensed it was important. Keanu took a seat, looked at their curious faces, and started speaking. A few years ago, he said gently, "I came into this very store. I had an old phone. I was quiet. I didn't look special, and some people laughed. The room fell silent. But I didn't walk away angry. I walked away thinking about how we treat people based on what they wear or carry." He paused and looked around the room. No one interrupted. Everyone listened closely. "I'm not here to talk about that moment. I'm here to talk about what we can do now, about how we can be different, about how we can be better." One of the workers raised their hand and asked, "You own this company, don't you?" Keanu nodded slightly. "I helped a group of kind people build something better. Together, we saved this place. Not to prove anything, but to create a space where kindness lives." The young manager stood up and spoke. "I was the one who made fun of your phone. I didn't know who you were. I judged you. I'm truly sorry." Keanu smiled and said, "I forgave you the moment I left that day. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them." Then he pulled something from his pocket. It was the same old flip phone, still scratched, still worn. He held it up and said, "This phone still works. And more than that, it holds the last message from my sister, photos of people I loved, and memories that can't be replaced." The room was still. Some people looked down. Few had tears in their eyes. This phone isn't just technology. It's part of a story. Just like every person who walks through that door has a story. Some may look poor. Some may seem strange. Some may not speak much. But all of them deserve respect. He placed the phone on the table gently. "I want you to remember this," he said. "You may never know what someone is going through. But you always have a choice to be kind." The room was filled with emotion. The manager looked at Keanu and said, "We'll never forget this." From that day, every new employee at the company was told this story during training. Not because it involved a celebrity, but because it taught something real. How one simple act of kindness or one unkind word can stay with someone forever. They also created a new rule in every store. No customer would ever be judged, no matter their phone, their clothes, or their background. Everyone would be treated with the same care. And above every front desk, a small photo of that old flip phone was placed in a glass frame. Below it were the words, "Kindness begins with how you see people." Keanu didn't return often. He didn't need to. But that one visit changed everything. He left the store quietly, just as he had years ago. But this time, the air felt different. The workers didn't laugh. They stood in silence, grateful. The customers who walked in that day were greeted with smiles and warm voices. And in the back of the store, the old manager looked at the photo on the wall and whispered, "Thank you." Because sometimes the most powerful change comes not from anger, but from quiet forgiveness and the courage to be kind. A few months had passed since Keanu Reeves visited the store and spoke to the team. His words had left a deep mark on everyone's heart. No one forgot his story. No one forgot the way he forgave. But most of all, no one forgot what he taught them to treat people kindly, no matter what they looked like or what phone they held. The store had changed a lot. People now came in with smiles, not fear. Staff no longer judged customers by the model of their phones or the clothes they wore. Instead, they asked questions gently, listened with care, and helped with patience. The whole company began to feel like a family, not just a business. One afternoon, something happened that showed just how far they had come. A woman walked into the store. Her clothes were worn and dusty. She looked tired, her face pale, her hands shaking slightly. In one arm, she carried a small boy around, 5 years old, who had a toy car in one hand and no shoes on his feet. She stepped inside slowly, holding a broken phone in the other hand. The store was quiet. A few customers stood around. The woman didn't look up. She went straight to the desk and whispered, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I dropped my phone. I need it fixed. It has my son's school details and my work contacts. I don't have money for a new one." The young worker behind the desk smiled kindly. "You're not bothering anyone," she said softly. "We're glad you came in." She gently took the broken phone and examined it. The screen was cracked and the battery was loose. It looked like it had fallen hard. Normally, the repair cost would be more than the phone's value. But the worker didn't mention that. Instead, she asked, "Would you like to sit down while I check if we can save the data?" The woman looked surprised. "Yes. Thank you." The worker offered the little boy a juice box from the mini fridge and gave him a sticker to play with. His eyes lit up. He sat down on the soft bench in the kid's corner, smiling for the first time in a while. A few minutes later, the store manager came out from the back. He looked at the phone and spoke with the worker quietly. Then he walked over to the woman and said, "Your phone is very damaged, but we can recover your data. We'll also give you a gently used phone we keep in our care package bin for cases like this." The woman gasped, "But I can't pay." The manager shook his head kindly. "It's a gift. You're doing your best. That's enough for us." Tears filled the woman's eyes. She covered her mouth, unable to speak for a moment. "My husband passed away 2 months ago," she finally whispered. "I've been working 2 jobs to take care of my son. This phone, it had everything." The staff didn't say much. They simply listened. They gave her water. They fixed her data. They transferred everything to the donated phone, added a fresh case, and even added a few prepaid days of service. Before she left, the little boy looked up at the manager and said, "You're like superheroes." The manager laughed softly. "No, kiddo. We're just trying to be kind." Later that evening, one of the workers wrote an email to Keanu, sharing what had happened. He read it quietly, sitting on the balcony of his home, the city lights glowing in the distance. He smiled. This is what he wanted. Not fame, not headlines, but small, real moments. Acts of kindness that grew from one small seed of respect. That wasn't the only story like this. Across the country, more stores under the new company were doing the same. Helping the elderly fix phones for free. Giving young students a safe place to sit and charge their devices. Offering warm smiles, free coffee, and no pressure. People started to notice. They wrote online reviews. Not just about the phones, but about how they were treated. Some posts read, "I walked in feeling nervous. I left feeling seen. They didn't sell me the most expensive phone. They helped me find the right one. I didn't have enough money. They treated me like I was rich." Slowly, the company's name became known not just for phones, but for kindness. And at the heart of it all was Keanu. He never took credit. He never stood in front of cameras. He let the people shine, because for him, the real win wasn't money. It was knowing that the store that once made him feel small, now made others feel safe. And that was worth everything.